What was your response to the verdict? I call it a verdict. It's actually a grand jury decision last week, but it seemed like a verdict. It seems that you had a grand jury that actually conducted a trial for one side of the case. The other side, Mike Brown, dead.
Absolutely. And we decry when cases of flagrant violation occur in other countries. We are upset when we think due process is not acknowledged. We are outraged when we think that people don't have access to evidence and able to defend themselves, or at least people who are concerned about the case defend a particular point of view. We had a full-on trial, except we didn't have anybody defending Mike Brown or his memory or his point of view. We had no testimony that was put forth by a defense lawyer that might have repudiated several of the things that Officer Wilson said. And then we had a prosecutor who was acting as a defense attorney for Officer Wilson. And there's a sad, tragic predictability about what happened, because Robert McCulloch, the prosecutor, has never brought a case against a police person who has been accused of killing a black person there in the area. So when you put all that stuff together, it was a toxic brew. It was predictably something that would end in an unsatisfying verdict because it was a trial. And I think this underscores the inability of people of color to get our viewpoints across. It is not simply a matter of mistrust or distrust. You know, when somebody's abusing a child, you don't say, let's develop trust between a parent and a child. You remove the abusive parent, give them some parenting skills and lessons, or at the very least prevent them from imposing further abuse on that child. So I think that the very metaphor that regulates and governs the kinds of meetings between the White House, which are critical and necessary, and police departments and citizens surely must involve developing trust, but trust only after the abuse has been removed.
You mentioned the word child, Michael, and that's exactly how Darren Wilson described how he felt. He felt like a 5-year-old child dealing with, I think he put it, Hulk Hogan. Can you talk about the trove of papers that McCulloch released and that description that Darren Wilson gave of dealing with Mike Brown?
Yes, that's an excellent point to underscore. Mike Brown was 6'4", and 292 pounds. Officer Wilson is 6'4", 210 pounds. So you are hardly a child against a Hulk Hogan. Look at what's being reinforced here. The brawny, blustering, as Ann Petrie put it, you know, behemoth, this big black man, 18 years old, this big black man, who was rising up in the collective imagination of America and in Officer Wilson's sight as some kind of demonic force. He literally used the word demon. It was a demon. It looked like a demon coming at me. He's reduced him to a thing. He's made him an animal or less. He's made him a figment of not only his imagination, but the collective imagination of America that has been fearful of the black male threat. When you put all that stuff together, from pop culture, from deep religious and scientific treatises in the early part of the 20th century that were completely and thoroughly racist, then you've got a tremendously difficult problem on your hand. And that is to say, how do black people protect themselves, not against simply the bullets of a police officer, but the metaphors, the stereotypes, the tropes that operate in that police officer's imagination that are equally lethal because they lead to trigger happy cops, or at least hair trigger decisions where cops end up believing that they must use lethal force to contain a threat that's not even real, or if there is a real threat, resort to the most lethal form of resolution of the conflict, as opposed to trying other things like driving away, like using mace, like tasing, like calling for help and the like. So when we think about all of this, this is the dehumanization of African American people. This is the failure to recognize our fundamental rights to exist in the state. And this is using state authority to legally execute black people on the streets of America.
I don't think it's a haunting. It's always going to be something that happened.
You have a very clean conscience.
The reason I have a clean conscience is because I know I did my job right.
Professor Michael Eric Dyson, your response.
Well, this is disturbing. First of all, even people, men of war, women of war, who feel that they are executing their duly sworn responsibilities have a sense of shame or guilt, or at least some kind of disturbing emotion that makes them regretful of having to do what they think they have to do. This man has a clear conscience because he is conscienceless when it comes to executing his responsibilities in the face of, black humanity, denying black humanity, refusing to acknowledge that there were alternatives available to him, and then feeling a kind of dispassion, a kind of clinical distance from the event, as if it was somebody else doing it. And the reason he is not bothered by it, because I think that this man has been reared in a culture that has taught him the lack of respect for black lives. That's why the Black Lives Matter is important. One of the things that is necessary to say is that 84% of white people who are killed are murdered by other white people. Why aren't we outraged by white-on-white crime? Why aren't we talking about the vicious and insidious decline of moral stature in white America? Why aren't we talking about pathologies of white culture that lead to meth labs being generated on campuses, or the decline in moral imagination as exhibited in pop stars who are decried from pulpits across America in white culture? So we could develop a kind of, tablet of demonology against white America, which would be ridiculous, because the problem is deeper and more profound than that. Intra-racial violence from in groups is endemic in America. So people kill where they live. They commit crime where they live. If you want integrated killing, you have to have integrated communities. Now, tongue in cheek there.